I'll give you sharing. Okay.
Good morning, everybody. This is Barbara Ross Burns. I'm joined by Jeff Holmes and Jessica Bergstrom, and we're going to discuss vaccine inventory and administration this morning. Jeff, can we make sure that people can hear us? Looks like everybody is muted. I wonder if we can just unmute everybody, given the fact it's a small group. We have 8 people on the call with us. Good morning, Estuardo, Heather, Carrie, Liesel, Sheila, and somebody else I can't see below.
I'm trying to unmute right now. Can everyone hear us okay? If someone could type into chat real quick that you can hear us. Or you can raise your hand on the little polls. This is why I wanted to do it over here. Okay, looks like we got one person says they can hear us, so I think we're good.
Okay, great. So we've got some yellow exclamation points. Okay, never mind. So that's good. All right. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started, you guys. Thanks again for joining us. This is going to be a refresher for some of you and new for some of you. And we hope that this hour and a half will be helpful in solving some of the challenges that I know everybody experiences with vaccine inventory and administration. So on screen, you'll see I've posted our agenda. And right off the bat, I'd like to go through the goals. So as Jessica and I have worked to support everybody with this process, we'd like to say that the goals for today are that we want to make sure that all vaccines are added to each clinic inventory using the naming convention that you'll see in the documentation. We want to make sure that all expired vaccines are hidden so that they don't basically cause confusion for you as a vaccine inventory manager. The fewer rows that you see will help you keep your vaccines clean. Additionally, once a vaccine has hit 0 in quantities, it's important to hide it also, unless you're going to be able to inventory that exact same vaccine again in the near future. The goal also is to make sure that your vaccine available units matches what's in your refrigerator at any given time. In terms of once you're actually administering vaccines, you should never be in the situation where a medical assistant or provider is administering a vaccine and lot numbers aren't coming up in the actual screen. There should always be lot numbers there if indeed your vaccines are inventoried. Additionally, our goal is to make sure that when you're administering a vaccine, that if it's pediatric, that the vaccine that is chosen is one from the favorite screen, and if it's an adult vaccine, that you're choosing from an adult favorite. If you're needing to go out to search for something, it means that something's been added to your formulary that we are not aware of, and you should bring it to either my attention or Jessica so that we can help get it on the favorites or straighten out a problem if there's a problem that's been introduced. And if we're able to hit all these goals, then the next time you run your VFC reconciliation, it should be much, much cleaner, because it means that the vaccine inventory is talking to NextGen, NextGen is talking to IIS, and all the data is going back and forth, flowing properly. Jessica, is there anything you would add to our goals or anything you'd like to elaborate on?
No, just to make sure everyone, if you do have questions, please ask questions at the end. And then this isn't going into everything about VFC. That will be a separate conversation later. I know Kayla's working on the VFC project. So this is mainly about next gen and vaccine inventory to make sure that we have this set up correctly. There will be just a little bit of VFC about selecting fund sources and whatnot, but I'm anticipating there will be more VFC conversations later.
Great. So the first thing we're going to do is actually go through the training document for vaccine inventory. My plan is to basically go through the documentation and then go into NextGen and show you. So we're going to kind of do a show and tell sort of thing. So
Let's go ahead and make it full screen.
where?
Click on that and do full screen. There you go.
All right, so now we've got full screen, and I want to bring up my other Word document. It's right here. I'm going to maximize this. So this is a document that Jeff sent a link out to yesterday to our group. Additionally, it's one that probably many of you have seen in the past, but I've been using it to update it as things change. So we're just going to kind of go through this from top to bottom, and then we'll go into NextGen and do it. So, so right off the bat, vaccine inventory is assuming that first off, you've ordered your vaccines through IIS online and you've received those vaccines. If you don't do that, then your reconciliations will never be right with IIS. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, in order to do vaccine inventory on NextGen, each user has to have specific security to do so. So I have added in names of users here at NeighborCare who should be able to do this, and I've removed names of staff who shouldn't be able to do it anymore. So if you find that you've been told that you should be doing this, and you go to the process of trying to get to these screens and you don't have access, just let me know, and it just means that I need to add security for you to do it. So there's that. And the other piece is NextGen's file maintenance for vaccine inventory is for NeighborCare as a whole, as a practice. And so it's really important that when you're doing vaccine inventory, you make sure that you're only doing it for your own clinic. So that will be clear in the screens that I show you. So first up, you're going to go to the NextGen application launcher. You're going to choose file maintenance. And then in file maintenance, you're going to choose EHR. From EHR, you're going to choose vaccine inventory. That's all pretty straightforward. And if you have security, then it'll be there and you can open it up. And so the vaccine inventory, because it's jointly managed by many users here at NeighborCare, as a result, we have a lot of vaccines in our system. And so because there's so many, in order for any to even pull up, the first thing you have to do is you have to type an asterisk in the vaccine inventory list search, and that will bring up what's there. And so the very first thing that I typically do, because when I'm trying to support vaccine inventory, I know that I'm either doing it for 45th Street or Lake City or a site in particular, I usually sort the whole file by location. So you do that just by clicking on the column, and then a little flashlight will appear. Just as I sort by location, you can also sort by expiration date or vaccine name or brand, or another one I sort by a lot just because I think in these terms is the actual CPT code, so the actual billing code, like a 907 something. So you can sort by any of the columns by clicking on the column, and then a flashlight will show. So scroll down to where your vaccines start. So if you're Estuardo, you'd scroll to 45th Street. If you're Sally at Lake City, you'd scroll down to Lake City. And then if you're in the situation where you need to add a new vaccine, you're basically clicking on the little Norton button over here, which is the goofy document thing, and click New to add a new vaccine for your site. Now, it's going to bring up this screen here, which is a lot of information in a small screen. So depending on how you're adding a new vaccine, you may be adding it from, say, a packing list, or you might be adding it from holding a vaccine in your hand and seeing what it says. But basically, the goal is to pull down from something called First Data Bank the vaccine that you want to add, and you have to go out and find it. So you could go out and search for it by NDC or procedure or actual manufacturer. If you know it's GSK, you would sort everything by manufacturer, and then maybe look at your description to see, okay, which one of these is the one I really want. So in order to find what you want, then typically, if you're sorting on manufacturer, you'd click on the manufacturer column. That would then sort it all, and you'd basically scroll down to find the one you want. Same thing if NDC. If you've got an NDC that you want, click on NDC. It's going to sort the column, and then you basically have to try to find the one in the right numeric order that is equal to the one you have in your hand. Same thing's true for procedure. But you're basically looking for an exact match, that it's the right manufacturer, it's the right NDC, and it's the right description, and if you know what the procedure code is, that it's the right procedure code. So there's that. And once you find the one you want, say if I wanted to add this diphtheria, then all of these boxes, these red boxes, are what are required for the vaccine to be added successfully. You're going to add your vaccine name, what the quantity is. You're going to put in what the starting units is, and that would mean, say you got 30 of them, you would put 30 in as your starting units, and then going forward, any use of the vaccine will decrement from that starting units and modify the available units so that it's always going to be decreasing as they're used. You'd also put in the lot number for the vaccine, and you'd put in the NDC ID and the expiration. Down here, it's really critical to make sure that while your vaccines are all associated with NeighborCare Health, that the vaccines get associated with the clinic that you work at. A vaccine inventory can only be associated with one clinic at a time. So some sites, it's a bit of a challenge. I know a 45th Street shares also with Youth Clinic. Jessica's discussed some workarounds with that with Estuardo, which we can take offline. But basically, your location has to match for one location for the vaccine inventory. If the vaccines are for kids, you're going to mark them as VFC with this checkbox. If they're adult vaccines, you will not mark anything in that box. Once you've got it all added, you're going to say okay. And then this just kind of describes what I just said. What I would like to discuss is your vaccine name. Jessica Bergstrom has suggested for easy sorting of everything in our vaccine inventory and for uniformity across the organization, that the vaccine name should be your clinic abbreviation plus whether it's VFC or adult plus the actual vaccine. So in this case, I'm saying it's 45th Street space VFC space HIB, and if it were an adult vaccine, it would be 45th space adult space MCV4. So it's really important to use a naming convention. It will really help you a lot as you sort by location and then sort by description, because then it'll put like vaccines right next to each other. And that way you'll know, oh, I've got 3 MMRs or I have 5 of something. You know, it'll just help you on the sorting. And also I point out that as of our upgrade in June, adding in that NDC ID upon setting up in vaccine inventory is a new requirement, and that's because you can't add the NDC on the fly when you're doing an administration. So it's really important to get that in. If you were going to add another vaccine on the previous screen instead of okay, you would just hit next and you could just add them. So your inventory is managed through the starting units, the available units, and the units used. So like I said in my example, if you start with 30 and then you administer one of those, it would all of a sudden, if you went to vaccine inventory, it would say 30, and then units used would be 1, and available units would be 29. Every time a vaccine is used, this units used is going to decrement. So that's how your available units should match your fridge. Let's see. We have a lot of questions around, say if you receive more vaccine, what you should do. And basically, if you receive more vaccine that is exactly the same as a line of vaccine that you have set up in your vaccine inventory, it has to match on CPT code, manufacturer, lot, NDC, everything, then you can actually add that vaccine into an existing line. Say, for instance, of that 30 of this DTaP that I had, say, for instance, I got another 20 tomorrow. I could then increase my, my starting units by the 20, and that way it inflates that number up to what the new number. If it's not exactly the same, you can't add it into that one. And we can do the opposite if, say, for instance, you need to transfer a vaccine to another site for some reason. You can decrement, you can decrease your starting units. Say if you'd started with 30 and you gave 10 to, if 45th Street gave 10 of their DTaPs to Meridian, they could decrease it by 10, and then that would show that their vaccine inventory was decreased the right amount. Let's see. So, you know, a few years ago, VFC required that we all use vaccine inventory and required that this data gets reconciled against the IIS data. So that's the big why behind all of this. Plus, we want to make sure that our patients are getting their vaccines administered and documented correctly within our system for their own safety. Let's see. And then I'm going to skip this part because Jeff is going to go into great detail in a little bit about the actual administration of the vaccine. But you all know that when you administer the vaccine, and if it's VFC, you always have to put the reason in. And a few months ago, it became apparent that IIS now requires that the funding source always be filled in. And that talks with the actual vaccine administration. And then the reporting tips are that basically, you know, you submit reports to Department of Health, and these are some tips about how to get those right. I'll also show you this report later on, but there's a report that you can run from SQL, which helps you know what is in your refrigerator, and we can show that on screen in a little bit. But this is the steps on how to get to it. That is about it on the actual documentation. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go into NextGen. And here we are. So we're going to start with file maintenance. And then the next thing is I'm going to choose EHR. And you can see vaccine inventory up here at the top. One thing I did discover a few months ago is when I was on a laptop, depending on the screen resolution, sometimes I couldn't see vaccine inventory. So that was kind of confusing. But I was able to always see it if I come up here to the master files. So that's good. So vaccine inventory, click on that, and it brings up this big old empty vaccine inventory. And you might say, where is everything? Why isn't it here? So you, in the vaccine inventory list search, you're going to type an asterisk, and that's going to bring up everything that's there. Right off the bat, you can see the flashlight is sitting on vaccine name, and that means it's sorting everything in here by the name of the vaccine. Notice with this new naming convention, because all of 45th Street start with 45th, that they're all bunched up. That's a good thing. It also coincides with the location matching on 45th Street. Now, if I wanted to sort the whole thing by expiration date, I'll see we've got 3 that should not be that way. It looks like we've got 1 at 45th Street and 2 at Ballard. All vaccines should always have an expiration date. So you guys, you might want to think about getting in there and fixing those ones and adding the vaccine date that corresponds with the lot number. So that was one way to sort. That was another way to sort the file. And I do check this file periodically for these kinds of things. One thing that's kind of screwy, which is not nice, it doesn't really sort so much by date. It sorts by month first. So if I wanted to say, look for anything that had a 2017 date, I actually have to scroll down with my eyes to look at everything that's a January date first, and then and scroll down that way, which is kind of a bummer, and look for the 17s. But I do that pretty frequently. My documentation for you says sort by location, and that will make sure that you can look at all of the ones that are yours. And so again, we've got a couple here that don't have a location. So we're going to want to figure out where those belong. So we've got a Pike, a Vashon High School, and I guess it's just, no, there's 3. There's just the 2. So we're going to want to get those fixed too, because again, just like they all need NDCs, they all need a location. Otherwise, the system won't know how to decrement your vaccine from where. So we've got it sorted by location, and I'm just going to scroll down here. And you'll notice as you get in here, you might say, hey, why aren't the school-based health centers using the naming convention? That's because they're just about to restart the school year, and they are going to start using the new naming convention as they start the school year. So we're going to see like all the school-based sites start following the naming convention, which will be a good thing. And again, and you'll then by doing that, you can see that the benefit will be that all of, say, Bailey Gatzerts will bunch together nicely. So that's what it looks like as a whole. So now I am going to go through the process of saying I want to add a new vaccine. So I'm going to click on the Norton button. I'm going to say new. And it's going to bring up a big file right here that is updated once a month, typically like the last week of the month. And basically what happens is OCHIN, who supports our NextGen installation, gets an update from NextGen. NextGen had gotten it from a group called First Data Bank, and they manage the whole medication module. So the content that appears in your medication module in NextGen, as well as all of these vaccines, is driven by that file that gets refreshed every month. So as a vaccine disappears and isn't available anymore, it eventually falls off of this. As a medication disappears in the medication module, it eventually falls off. It's not immediate because people have those in their inventories, and sometimes it takes a little longer than we'd like. But that's the source for this data. We have had situations in the past where you guys actually receive something that isn't even in First Data Bank yet. And we have to be alerted when that happens so that we make the right choices. So right off the bat, I'm going to say that I want to search for, Jessica suggested maybe I search for an upcoming flu shot. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep. So I am going to search for, I'm actually going to go out and fish for one, actually. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to sort the file by medication description. No, I'm going to sort by manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
And so then I'm going to sort it again because it put my, it did it Z to A versus A to Z. So now I've got it A to Z on the manufacturer, starting with letter B, and I'm going to scroll down to the G's because I'm going to look for a GlaxoSmithKline. And then within that, you were saying maybe get a Fluarix.
Yes, we're ordering Fluarix again.
Okay, so now I know I'm looking at the GlaxoSmithKlines, and then I'm over here in the B's for Bexsero. So I'm going to keep scrolling down till I get to the F's. And I passed them up, and I'm going to scroll back up, and there, sure enough, there's some Fluarixes. You'll see that these two are perfect examples of ones you probably would not inventory anymore because they're in the past, 2016, 2017. But they do appear here for a while. We see 2017, 2018, but we do not yet see a 2018, 2019, which means that, say for instance, you received Fluarix in your clinic and it's for the 2018-2019 flu season, it's not yet in this first data bank update. I would hope, if there's going to be a Fluarix, that it miraculously appears in this file, maybe at the end of August.
Yeah, we had this issue last year.
Yeah, or at the latest, and maybe at the end of September, because there is a little bit of a lag. But just for these purposes, we're going to pretend like that this is the one that we really wanted. We wanted this 2017, 2018. And notice once I clicked on it, it basically filled in all of this information. It says it's an active vaccine, what the procedure code is, that's what billing uses, what the description is, what the CVX is, and what the CVX vaccine name is. It also filled in some of these other things by default. So it's got your NDC ID. Now, it would be important for you to also make sure that that NDC ID really is the one that matches what you got. So you're going to want to check that. Because this one here is a perfect example. If you chose the 2017, 2018, but what you're actually trying to inventory is the 2018-19, that NDC is not going to be the same. So that's a heads up like, hey, call Jessica or call me, and we're going to try to figure out what the timing is going to be on the update. So if you were going to add this, you would say, okay, I'm adding 30 of these. And notice as I click through here, it then made the available units 30. I'd have to put in an expiration date, of course. I'm going to say that it's just that date there, just because. And if I were going to add it for, I'm going to add it for 45th Street Dental just because I don't want to mess anybody up. And I'm going to hide this. And if this flu shot was for kids, I would then click the VFC. Now here, if it was 45th Street, I would say 45th space, and then I would say VFC, and I would say, and what would we call this?
Flu.
Flu, just like that. Okay, so that's how I would set it up. I would also put in the lot number. That you'd have lot number doesn't fill in because it's going to be different based on what you receive, so you would actually type that in.
AEJ123.
AEJ123. Very good. And isn't there something with lots never have zeros? Yeah, IIS says that lot numbers never have the letter O. And they will have zeros in lot numbers, but they will never have the letter O. So make sure when you're setting up your lot numbers that you don't confuse a letter O with a zero. So there's a tip on that, and that is in the documentation. If I wanted to go ahead and just set this up now, I would say okay.
You should go through the strength of the.
Oh, sure, sorry. So in this case, the one that ships is by default the 60 microgram, and the quantity 0.25. That's what I chose. IIS isn't making us put in strength or quantity. No, it is. We do have to put in quantity. I'm sorry. We don't have to put in strength for IIS, but it's a good thing to do.
The strength will automatically be there to select the quantity. You should know based on the vaccine. If it was a PEDS vaccine, it might be 0.25. Usually it's a 0.5. So that's dependent upon the vaccine that you're administering, and is it for an adult dose or a PEDS dose.
So if I wanted, if now I've got all the elements in here, and I could say okay, and it would add it in. If I wanted to add a second one in, I could just click next, and that will basically start me over so I can add a new second vaccine. I'm going to go ahead and add it, and I'm going to hide it, because then I can show you how to hide too. So now if I resort this whole thing by location, I've got to refresh it. I'm going to close it out again, go back in. And sort it by location. And there it is, 45th Street Dental. So say for now you've just determined you made a mistake. You really don't want to have that line showing. Or it wasn't even a mistake, but your available units is 0, and you just want to get it on so you don't have to see it anymore. You just do a right click on it and you can hit hide. So I'm going to hide that. Yes. Hiding basically makes it go away so it doesn't pull to inventory and you don't have to see it anymore. So you can hide mistakes, you can hide things that are expired, you can hide things that have a 0 quantity, whatever makes your life easier, because what you want to see here is what you really have in your fridge. Any other tips you'd say?
You can also edit it. So if you did make a mistake, instead of just hiding it, you could actually fix it. And then say you have
just by opening it. Yep. So I did a right click and I'm just going to say open. I'm opening up Estuardo's 45th Street Adult. If I wanted to change something, I could go in and change something. If I wanted to add some more, I could add some more to the starting units, and you just say okay.
Yep. And if you do have like flu vaccine or other vaccines, another helpful thing if you want to see if you have the same exact lot number and vaccine on hand already, you could run your SQL vaccine report, breeze through it and be like, oh, I have this same lot number. I'm not going to create a new one. I'm just going to go and add this vaccine onto this file. It's already here. Also, another common mistake, you forget to add the location. You go, your MA says, hey, this doesn't come up in the vaccine inventory when I'm trying to select it. The lot number is not coming up. Go and check your vaccine inventory and make sure that there's a location, or it could be that you didn't select VFC when it's supposed to be VFC. So when you go to administer, it's not going to show up as a lot number to select a file.
So while I was doing a right click on the row to hide it, you've also got a hide button. So once you're opened it and you want to hide it, you just click the little Groucho Marx guy and click the hide button there. So I'm not going to make any changes to this, so I'm just going to cancel it because I don't want to mess that up. But Jessica made a good point. If you've got stuff that's doesn't have a location, I can go into this Vashon Island hepatitis. We know it's Vashon Island because they use the naming convention. I'm going to go down here to location and add Neighbor Care Vashon Island High School to it, and that will fix that problem. And then I just say, okay. And now that one's going to get fixed. It doesn't go away right away. It has to do a refresh. And then Sheila, I'm going to go ahead and do this one too since I'm here. PMMC. We know that is Pike, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change that to Neighbor Care Pike. And that will make sure that it'll decrement in the future. I'm going to say okay. And now if I close this and then I open it back up and sort by location, notice nothing is blank at the top anymore because we fixed the 2. So the little right click here makes you be able to add new things. You can open something existing. You can hide something. The printing, I wouldn't print because it prints even larger than NeighborCare. We actually end up seeing Country Doctor vaccines, Health Point vaccines, all sorts of vaccines. So don't print here. Your better printing is through the SQL report. And I'm gonna show you that one next. Is there anything else you think I should show on adding the new?
No, just at the beginning, maybe there's a little confusion for ordering your vaccine. VFC, you order through VFC, and you need to acknowledge it through the IIS system. Adult vaccines, those are ordered from our McKesson MedSurg account. Just to clarify that, so there's no acknowledging that in the IIS system for adult vaccines, just VFC in the.
So I'm going to go out to run a SQL. No, I went to Chrome because we can run SQL reports from Chrome now, and I've got the NeighborCare portal up, and at this point I'm going through that one document, the long document that has a lot of the tips about vaccine inventory in it, and I think I'm going to page 9 of that document, and this is how you get to the SQL report. So choose SQL report here, and then from the home screen you're going to choose operations, and then from here on operations you're going to choose medical, and then from medical you'll choose vaccine inventory. So, and now this report, it's got a pick list that brings up all the locations that have vaccine inventory associated. If you'll notice that 45th Street Dental is not there, and it's because it doesn't think that 45th Street Dental has vaccine. So I'm going to choose 45th Street Medical, and I'm going to hit View Report. And when it comes up, you might think, well, heck, where's my data? And what happens is everything gets compressed until I unclick the plus sign or click the plus sign. Once you click the plus sign, then basically anything that is an active vaccine that has not been hidden will show here. You can use it to kind of understand what the system thinks you have in your fridge. You can use it kind of for quality control to make sure you're sorting, you're using the right naming convention. You can also scan it to make sure you're filling in all the fields. Like here, I'm missing a quantity here. You can scan, you can see that for this 45th Street Adult Hep A, I don't have a quantity in. And so you can use it for a lot of different things, but the most important thing you get out of it is at the beginning of every day, providing the report server refreshed last night, it will give you an accurate count of what the system thinks you have for your vaccines. The further you get from the morning time and having administered any vaccines during the day, the further apart that report will be, because basically it's true as of last night, essentially midnight. So if you were to try to use this report, I would suggest you run it first thing in the morning before anybody's administered any vaccines. And that way you'll know what NextGen thinks you have. If you were to do that at noontime, you'd have to say, okay, who did what since we opened this morning, and have to mentally reconcile that in your brain, which is probably challenging with all the vaccines you guys do. So I suggest doing it in the morning. Once you have your report, you can save it. You can export it to, say, Excel if you want. You can even just print it if you just want to put your eyeballs on it and compare it to something else. Whatever you want to do. So export here with Excel, or print it. I can also run it for all clinics, and that works too. It produces a lot of information, but if I was a school-based person and I really wanted to look at Bailey Gatzer and I wanted to look at, say, another school-based, I could then just open up those ones. So it's really depending on what your purpose is. So Jessica might run it for a lot of sites, but you as an individual at your clinic, you probably are only looking at your own data. However, you could also look at other people's data to see how are they doing something, if that helps you answer a question about what you've got.
So now that we're inventorying everything, VFC and adults, this report should be used to also help you manage your inventory, because it should be accurate if we're doing everything correctly. So you won't have to visually go and check vaccine fridges to see what you have on hand or what needs to be ordered. This report should be accurate if we're inventorying everything correctly.
Okay, so just the big takeaway, what Jessica just said, and then timing of the report. It's only accurate first thing in the morning. However, it's accurate all weekend long if you're not administering any vaccines on the weekend. So leave that to you and your CAs and leadership to say, oh, when's a good time for me to do this? Because it's hard to count things that are moving all the time. So the next thing we're going to show you is the proper vaccine administration and production. So Jeff and I are going to switch drivers, and Jeff Holmes, our EHR trainer analyst, is going to show you how to do that so that all this data talks to each other.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. All right, let me get in here and go to EHR. Okay, I am going to okay, I got a couple test patients ready to go. So the first one I'll pull up a pediatric patient. And okay. All right, so I've got this pediatric patient here, and I'll go ahead and we'll administer maybe MMR or something like that. So first thing we'll have to do, of course, is come in and click on to order, a new order, and then I can go ahead and choose the vaccines I'm going to order. So forgive me if I'm technically inaccurate as to which one I'm doing, but if you see me doing something incorrect, you can
No, that's
yell it
right,
out.
if you just want MMR.
Since I don't do this on a daily, matter of fact, I've probably never given, I gave once when I was 18. I think I gave a vaccine to a kid, but anyway. So the first time you click on a vaccine, it's going to ask you about allergies, right? And so if there's no allergy, you'll see any allergies on the chart showing up, but you'll double check these 4 allergies here. You can go ahead and say no to all allergies, and then we'll save. And then from there, if you want to give additional vaccines, you can go in, and so maybe we'll give PCV13, and maybe I'll do DTaP or something like that. So from there, once you've got it ordered, you can come over here to the tab below that says Vaccine Details. The first thing that'll pop up is your vaccine inventory, your VIS sheet, your vaccine information sheet. You have the option here of choosing different languages that you want it to print in. Depending on what you do at the clinic, if you're going to print these, you can print all right here. You can choose the languages you want to print. If you already have them printed and you're just handing them a copy that's been printed already, you'll need to hit Document as Given. So whether you hit Document as Given or you print them, either way, it's going to save them into the chart, and it's going to give us credit for proving that we actually gave these sheets. If you simply cancel it, we'll have no way of proving that we actually gave a vaccine inventory sheet to a patient, which I believe is required by law. So in this case, we have these all printed out, and I'm just going to go ahead and say Document as Given. From there, you'll notice I'm in my DTaP. So each item that I click on, I can go ahead and document my administration for each one. So since it's a pediatric patient, I want to make sure I click on VFC. I'll need to come in here and give a reason. So the reason will be based on insurance or non-insurance. So in this case, we'll say they're Medicaid, something like that. And then it's also required that you do a funding source. And the funding source that we'll be giving here is going to be public VFC, right? This list changed recently. Some of you, if you haven't looked at this in a while, you might notice the list looks a little different. We've updated the documentation as well to reflect this, but the public VFC is what you want to choose there. So once you have those items there, this VFC checkbox right here is the key to getting the proper lot number here. So I'll just demo something. If I was to uncheck VFC, my lot number is going to be different. Whereas if I check the VFC, right,
So
you're going to get
lot number should be for the adults if you don't select VFC.
Correct. VFC is for pediatrics. If I was doing an adult vaccine, which I'll demo in a second, it would pull up those.
Jeff, can we also show one thing?
Mm-hmm.
That those lot numbers are corresponding to the location
Exactly.
for your encounter.
Right. So if I was to show you my encounter location here, which I don't think I can because I'm going to pop up, but it's actually based on the encounter, and the encounter I had was over a 45th Street clinic. So if the encounter was the wrong clinic, you're going to actually pull inventory from that location. So, and just like earlier when we had it someplace that didn't have a location set up, you wouldn't find anything in here because they wouldn't know what location to pull it from. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and come in here and we'll say we pulled out of the fridge this particular item. Okay, now if you happen to pick an item that has an expired, it's expired, the system will alert you. Matter of fact, that we just happen to pick one where the selected vaccine lot is expired. So if I was an MA giving this, I would want to make sure I let my VFC coordinator know that this particular lot number that's still available is showing up as expired. So I'll say okay, and I'll pick another one. Hopefully you're picking the vaccines out anyway, you know, but that, like I said, if it is showing expired, maybe it was inputted incorrectly, things like that. So you'll notice once I've picked the lot number, you'll see all the most of the information fills in automatically. Our amount, our billing, of course, billing code and all that stuff, the NDC number, expiration date, the lot number, everything that we filled out on our inventory fills in. The only things you're really missing, and route could be pre-filled in as well. This particular time it wasn't, so I'll click in here and we'll say it's intramuscular, I think, yeah. And then site is where it was given, so we'll just say we gave it in the left arm for today's purposes. And then from there, I do believe if this is considered a booster, you would need to indicate that here by this checkbox or maybe even a sequence number, correct? Is that required by Washington State site? I'm not sure if it was.
The sequence number?
The sequence number or no? I don't think it is. Okay. So from there, it'll also, because we've the vaccine date showing up for the date giving, it's already showing as administered. So this has all been pre-selected. And then down here is where you would do the MAs would do who they check this with. And I'm not going to worry about spelling today, but in reality, you'd want to spell it correctly. Okay, although we do have spell check, which is handy, right? Okay. From there, one of the things that changed with our last upgrade that I think confused some people initially was the fact that you just have a save button. You no longer have a save and send. So just to let you know, since I'm in production, I will not actually hit the save button and throw off 45th Street's inventory. So I don't want to do that to you, but I would hit save when I'm ready to administer this. Now, however, I can go in here first and go to my PCB 13, right? This all is stayed pre-selected for me. So once I've selected that, I'm good. Come in here, pick the lot number I'm giving, go ahead and fill in the appropriate information like we did before, and I would go to the last one and go ahead and follow suit, do the same thing. Fill all the appropriate information out. At the end of all this, I can hit save. Save will save this in NextGen so that we show it as administered. It will also send this information. It'll send these all this information out to the Washington State Immunization Site, WAISS, or otherwise previously known as child profile, as everyone commonly calls it. So all that information then will properly upload. It will go in the patient's chart that they've received the immunization. It will also update the inventory that they have on the Washington State site side of things. that way, if this is all done properly, whenever you go to order your new vaccine, you won't get the state telling you, hey, how come you haven't given what we gave you? We don't have a record that you gave any of it. But this will all seamlessly flow through there so that they deduct properly from their inventory, and that matches up with what our inventory says. At least it should. And there's probably going to be those cases, you know, that possibly there could be some things that still have to be reconciled, but this will cut down a lot on the, you know, a lot of this work up front we're doing will save a lot of work that probably gets currently done when you're trying to reconcile against the state to get your new vaccines ordered, right?
Absolutely. And you know, by setting up the vaccine inventory the way we described, and if you follow the documentation and do so, it will cut down on the amount of data entry and decision making that MAs have to do at the time of administration. They will, you know, they obviously want to confirm that what's coming up is really what's in their hand and what they're going to administer. But, you know, it's a far cry from having to type in an NDC number, look up a lot number, type in expiration dates, do all of that, because that's data entry intensive and prone to mistakes, and will be a time saver.
If this was a real patient, where would it come up with the IIS system to see what is on file outside?
Oh, I'll have to close that and show you. So one other thing to, and I'll do that in just a second. One other thing to keep in mind is if you got all these keyed up, ready to go, you can come in here also if any of these were wasted. You can give a date and reason. And when you save the wasted item, it will, that deducts from your inventory because it's wasted, but it's not going to show up as administered for the patient.
Correct. So you'd have to do it twice. If you did waste one and then did administer it.
Yeah, you would.
Because it'd only take away one, even though you used two.
Oh, right. Okay.
So you dropped one, or you one something happened to one, and then you added one. So you do it twice. You're right.
Okay, right. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this, and I'm going to say I'm going to exit anyway. Yes, I don't want to save it. So the question came up, where do you go to import? The import IIS utility link is right here. If I click on it, it will go out and search for this patient. Now, this patient does not exist over there, so I will most likely not get a return, or I may get some other patient information returned, but because it might think that is, but this is going to go out and search for this patient. Once the information uploads, you would see it appear here, and there's where you'd be able to tell. Yeah, here's an example. So this patient wasn't found, but you would see the different immunizations here, and you would see some arrows indicating whether, you know, the Washington State side or WAIS has a record of it and we don't, or there's one that shows what we've got administered and what they don't, and then there will be these double arrows that will show these up and down arrows that will show that it's both the EHR and their record has it both in both places, I should say. And then from there, you have the option of course, downloading these into NextGen. So one other thing I wanted to point out with this, because I've seen it on occasion, if for some reason you can't download the information from the WAIS site, you can come in here. The proper way to put a historical vaccine is not to go in and do the steps of ordering it and giving it like you're giving it and changing the date to some historical date. I've seen that before. The way to do historicals by hand is to simply click historical. From here, it opens up and you can pick what is maybe on this patient's record from elsewhere. So they're from out of state. You can go in and put those items in here, and then from here, put the date, and it would be required to put some type of source in, best choice of source. Once you enter these things in with the date and the source, then when you hit save and close, it will save this information and also send it up to the state registry as well. Just wanted to point that out, just in case someone out there didn't realize it. But I've seen cases where people go in and just order a brand new vaccine and change the date to some historical date, and then we get a call from billing wondering why, why are we just now getting a bill for something from 5 years ago, anyway, or a charge. So.
And they can also edit previously given vaccines on the historical. I know we've had cases where I've worked with users to the vaccine edit tab there.
Oh,
Next to
okay.
past entry. Had there been a bunch of vaccines there, they would all show up, the ones that were done in the past, and say, for instance, maybe they forgot to put something in on the vaccine or there was a mistake, they can make edits there too.
Okay, very cool. All right, so I think that is that everything we wanted to cover on that?
So let's see. Can we just go back and show the favorites one more time, Jeff?
For the adults.
Yeah.
For the adults?
So pretend you're doing a new order.
Mhm.
And then why don't you let's click on the pediatrics tab first. Click on pediatrics.
All right, we're on there now.
Okay, so right there, what you're seeing on that screen are the vaccines that Jessica says are the neighbor care formulary, right?
Yeah, it should be our favorites.
And so in theory, that list is equal to all the vaccines that you would have had in your vaccine inventory.
Yes, so if we add a new vaccine to formulary, a new vaccine came out, Shingrix. We haven't added that to the adult formulary yet. Barb and I would go in, add it to the favorites so that it's on the pick list, and then also it'll be easier to, well, for administration purposes, so you don't have to memorize CPT codes.
Right. And then our goal is to have this favorites list comprehensive enough so that it encompasses all of the vaccines that you are stocking at your clinic.
Yes.
And if you're finding that something's not there that you have, then give us a heads up.
Yes.
Because we want to make sure that we're keeping it as easy as possible for everybody to make the right choices. And also, as pharmacists, you need to know if somebody's getting stuff that you're not aware of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So our goal is to have that pediatrics favorite match. So it works closely with what VFC says the formulary is.
Yep.
We're hoping very soon to get an update from VFC as to what the flu formulary will be, in which case you can expect that we'll update this
Yes.
with that information. And so we'll remove things as we
Mhm.
need to, and we'll add things as we need to. We'll also try to make sure that the naming convention is friendly and not too long. You'll notice those influenza lines, those are really long, but it's what they are. If you flip over to adults, Jeff, we made a couple changes to this just this week because as we perused everybody's vaccine inventory, we determined that you guys had in stock things that we weren't really aware. So Jessica's done some research. Do you want to speak to that, Jessica?
Yeah, we just had very rarely will an adult need a polio vaccine, but we have it on our formulary for McKesson to order for adults, but we didn't have it in our favorites, so we've added that. We also had varicella being used also for adults, which isn't commonly used for adults. So we did add some things that weren't on there that were on our McKesson formulary for adults. That should be updated for now. Going forward, any new vaccines added to formulary should match what's in our favorites. And if not, please let Barbara or I know so that we can fix it. But we'll be on top of making sure that it does.
We also added the polio
Yep.
this week. So some of you have it, some of you don't, but now it's there for you to choose if indeed you need it. By picking your vaccines that you're going to administer off of the pediatric or adult favorites, it will prevent you from having to go out and search for them, which is going to be, again, a time saver. Because, again, if you search for something, the likelihood that you actually choose the one that's really set up in your vaccine inventory, it's very slim. So let us know if you're trying to administer something that's not on peds or adult favorites. Let's see. I think that was that.
We just wanted to go over the adult profile. We would still like you to select the funding source so that it's standard, so that it just, every time the MA is administering it, that's just one of their defaults to fill in. Obviously, we've had issues if the MA selects VFC, but then either forgets to select a reason or a funding source, it'll mess up your reconciliation on the IIS side. And so we're trying to keep everything as standard as possible so that it's just, I guess, from memory that you default to those.
right? So if it's not VFC and it's an adult, you would at least make sure that your funding source says private funds.
Yeah.
So I've written that up on page 7 of the documentation. That was his suggestion by 45th Street, right?
Yeah. This won't mess up any reports if it's not filled out for the adults, but we're just suggesting that you do this. So it's just in memory of all these fields need to be filled in if it was for VFC, so why not fill it in for adults? If that makes sense.
Right. Keep it consistent.
Muscle memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So let's see, how are we for time?
Good.
We're doing well on time. How can we get some questions? Because I know everybody's muted.
So we can probably open up to questions here. I'm trying to figure out if there's a way to, I don't know if I can unmute everyone all at once, but what we can do is if you look at your little dashboard there, you should have a way that you can hit a little hand to raise your hand. Then I could unmute you. And give me just a minute. I want to try and make this a little easier to see. You probably can't see what I'm doing here, but then I could unmute you one at a time, and then you could get your question answered. A few of you I noticed don't have like it shows you on the phone not able to be unmuted, so you might have to do it manually. But anyway, there should be a little, you should have a little thing on the sidebar where it has a little hand, and you should be able to hit the raise your hand icon, and I'll see it pop up. That, or there's a little dashboard, I think on the dashboard has questions. You can type a question in there as well, but it might be easier to unmute. So let me, all right, I see. All right, so Casey, I'm gonna unmute you. Okay, Casey, we should be able to hear you now.
Can you hear me?
I think. Hold on, give me just a second. I'm sorry, hold on just a second. Let me, oh, I'm gonna do this. Hold on, I gotta technically challenge for a second, hold on. Okay. All right, Casey, are you able to ask your question now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hold on, I'm having a speaker problem, so sorry about that. Why am I not hearing this?
Where can I type it?
I'm sorry.
Maybe chat, maybe
I don't know, I'm having some technical issues with the computer. I couldn't hear what you were saying, so maybe you can, are you able to type it into chat?
Oh yeah. Where's the chat?
Yeah, that or maybe we'll dial in on this. Hold on a second.
Oh, he's not on the phone.
Sorry, we'll be just a second here. Hold on.
I wonder what is this? Is this chatting? No, this is, this is where in the full screen. But that is just the main page. You dial in your phone and you vaccinated? I think, because we're
Okay, let's go ahead and try this again. Can you hear me? Casey?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes, we can now.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. Going back to entering historicals, can you clarify when you're entering the historicals at the bottom, there's save new and save and close. Does one send historicals from like say out of state to the IIS system, and one it just saves it into NextGen only?
Oh, okay. Let me go in there and take a look real quick. Give me just a second here. Let me full screen this real quick so it's easier to see. So let me close out of this real quick. Okay, so let's back up here real quick. So under historicals, so if I'm giving something that's a historical, what was your question again? Whether you save and close or save and new?
Yeah, does one send like out-of-state vaccine historicals to the IIS system, and one just saves it to NextGen, or what? Like, what are we supposed to select?
Oh, as far as
What's the difference
Saving
between
them.
save and save and new? Does save and new bring up another one to add, or?
I think in both cases there was-
yeah, I think so. I don't know. I hadn't really tested that to see what would happen. Let me just put something in here for a source. So if I was to hit save and new, then it's going to let me pick add others. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I don't find that particularly helpful. But I mean, you can simply come in here and do multiples. I guess if you just did one and then save and new, and you could pick others. But
But in both cases, they both get saved and they both get sent to IIS.
right, in both cases, they'll get saved up to IIS. So.
It's just one, maybe the
Oh,
save and
okay.
new is more streamlined for
And-
adding a new one.
And this is already going into our registry. Do we know anything about why there's another registry? No.
PMP
It's
is,
not for immunizations.
Oh, okay, great.
Prescription monitoring.
Okay, never mind. But yeah, so you just keep this the way it is. So, does that answer your question?
Yes. And then if there's any duplicates, it wouldn't double send it to the IIS system, like, because I've seen it before where some are in the IIS system already, but I wanted to enter it into NextGen.
And you've seen them like duplicated in there?
No, I'm just asking, would it duplicate it?
So, obviously, I think in that you'd say you're seeing it in IIS, but you want to add it in historically in NextGen. We're supposed
Right.
to use the import, right?
Yeah.
But if the import tool isn't working and you want to add it, it shouldn't impact WAIIS that it would add it as an additional vaccine because the date should match up.
Okay. And then I did have one more question. Sorry, go ahead.
Is it commonly happening that the import tool isn't working correctly? Does anyone
No.
have any? Okay.
I just wanted to double check just in case because it has happened before, not too often. And my other follow-up question was, why are we selecting private funds and instead of non-VFC?
Oh, on the adults?
Yeah.
We're just doing it so that it's habit for when you're doing VFC.
Yeah.
It's not going to mess up your reports if you don't, because that doesn't reconcile with IIS. But it's just so that everyone is using
Yeah.
those drop downs
It really doesn't matter if you do it or not on
for
adults,
adults.
but if you want to, it's a suggestion just to stay in the habit of always remembering and check those items so that, because with the kids it's required. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then I saw earlier, Heather, you had your hand raised earlier. Did you still have a question or no? I unmuted you. At least I thought I did. No?
I said no.
Just barely. If you can speak up a little bit.
Maybe it's the microphone. I said no. Thanks.
Oh, that's better. Yep. Yeah, I can hear you. Did you have a question, or I saw
No.
your hand go up, but it went back down? Okay.
No. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Estuardo. Now, Estuardo, are you able to unmute yourself? Because it won't let me do it for you unless I send you the pin. I just sent you an audio pin you'd have to plug in. Before I would, unless you want to unmute yourself. You should be able to unmute yourself in that little toolbar. Okay.
You can also chat too.
Or you can throw it in the chat questions or chat, or there's also a place for questions as well. Okay.
Any questions from anybody else? There's no way we can unmute everybody.
Let me just double check. I can do it one at a time.
Yeah, let's unmute.
I'm going to unmute everybody, so if you're having any background conversations, it'll start coming through, okay? Except for Estuardo, I can't unmute you at the moment. So I've unmuted everyone that's still on the call here, so if anyone wants to speak up, feel free. At least I hope they're coming through.
Pretty quiet.
Okay.
I was just going to give a quick update on flu. For adults, normally by this time we should be receiving it. For GSK, we should get our notification any day or week now. I haven't gotten an update from CSC, but we will be doing like we did last year, where we send you exactly what we're expecting to receive, CPT codes, and how it should be used. So we'll be sending that information out as soon as I get word that the vaccines are on their way.
And I would just add, you know, as you work on cleaning up any issues that you see with your vaccine inventory, or as you try to figure out why things aren't reconciling properly with IIS, I would say reach out to me, reach out to Jessica, and we can try to support you, because we know that there's a lot of moving parts with this, and there's a lot of places where it can fail on you. When everything's perfect, it works great. It's just getting a system in place to make it be relatively seamless. So reach out to us if you have questions, or if you just want to review what you've got, or if you're not seeing something you think you should. Because if you're having that question, you're probably not the only one. And if we fix it for you, we fix it for everybody. Okay. If there aren't any more questions, let's go ahead and stop the recording. And thank you very much for giving us your time this morning. We really appreciate it, and appreciate all the work you guys do in the clinics to help our patients. Have a good rest of your morning, everybody.
All right. Bye.
Bye.